Welcome to Rooted and Rising, the podcast that brings you unfiltered discussions with nonprofit visionaries. Together, we'll uncover practical solutions and inspire connections that elevate your mission. Now, here's your host, Shannon Onderko.
Hello.
Hi, Shannon.
So welcome. To start us off today, I figured we would talk about full transparency and honesty of why you're actually here.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. So I was very strategic in nature of bringing you on for one of the first episodes. And the reason being we were chatting a little earlier is because of how honest you are. And I think we need so much of the honesty. The whole purpose of having this podcast was to create a space for nonprofit leaders to be able to be very candid in their experience and be able to share some of the struggles as well as ideas for solutions. So that's why I have you here to just come out blazing, right?
Okay, then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to get us started, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, so I'm David Gonzalez. I've been in Erie for a long time, but I'm originally from Puerto Rico, and I am the CEO of St. Martin Center, a local nonprofit affiliated with Catholic Charities. All in all, I've been in the nonprofit sector in Erie for about 31 years, and so I've been around in various roles and sectors, so I have a good understanding of the nonprofit sector and other sectors as they intersect. And ultimately, it's really about helping those in need. So.
Sure. So how did you end up at St. Martin Center?
It was an interesting story. I was at my prior place of employment, and the CEO at the time called me to tell me she was retiring. And so she was making the rounds and just letting some people know. I had collaborated with St. Martin Center many ways, many years prior. And so, she told me at the time and naturally talked about the position. I did not apply first time for a variety of reasons. But somehow one of the board members got a hold of me, and 5 interviews, a few months later, 2 bishops, and I got the job.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I used to say that the joke's on them that they hired me, but it could be the other way around. The joke's on me that I said yes. So either way, it's been a good thing. 12 years now.
12 years.
That I've been in this role.
So let's chat a little bit about St. Martin Center and the services that they offer.
Yeah, so our services have changed a little bit over the years, but not drastically. And really, it started as a community center in the neighborhood of the Immaculate Conception Church, that's really actually not in operation anymore. But it grew to really be, we're really funded to service the county, although primarily we really work with city residents in Erie. But we do a few things and we do them well. It's about helping the individual and understanding that the help that we provide really impacts the whole community. So we do that really by 3 main things. We provide early learning. We feel that when children are ready for K through 12 school, they really have the first big step into successful academic career. We provide emergency needs, and of course, that's what a lot of people still know us for. And then we do what we call long-term services, which really more specifically is things like financial literacy and homeownership. So we kind of tend to work with really from 6 weeks of age to senior citizens and do touch on kind of major parts of life, right? Basic needs, long-term, and education.
Sure. So when we first started chatting about having you come on, I had mentioned about homelessness, right? And you were like, wait, we do so much more than that. That's a portion of it. But from what I'm gathering is there's almost this, let's break the cycle of homelessness by addressing it in education and financial literacy. What has been your experience with your clients?
I'm glad, to be honest, that homelessness is getting the sound bites, the attention it deserves, because it's certainly not a new thing in Erie. We do in fact work with homeless, but I would say our predominant work in our self-sufficiency department is for what we really believe, what we call people that are at risk of homelessness. And so for decades, really, we've provided the kind of staple program activity that we've done over the years is rent assistance, but we wrap that around other services. But really, that's kind of the focus. We want to intervene with an individual or family in crisis before it gets into, before they get evicted, or they, for example, for those that are homeowners, if they get their home foreclosed on, then it's a quick spiral, right, into poverty and crises. And so we try to intervene. As I said, we do have a specific funding for folks that are homeless coming out of shelters and whatnot. But the bulk of our self-sufficiency work is clearly aimed at keeping folks away from keeping them away from the streets, if you will.
So it sounds very much like it's a proactive rather than a reactive approach?
Yes, I certainly see it that way. I mean, the sad reality in terms of the overall nonprofit sector, and I'm speaking here beyond Erie, is that there are way more resources and funding applied to treatment sort of things, right? Sure. And so we'd like to think, and some of us, that if there were more help in the prevention side of things, then we would have less problems to deal with down the road. But yes, we feel that when we can help individuals with rent for a few months and provide them some financial literacy, give them food through our food pantry and wrap them up with other services, we buy them some time to get through this difficult patch, and hopefully they can be, the goal certainly is to help them be in a better place when they leave us, so that, they don't go back to that crisis. Not easy. And certainly I think it's important to say that homelessness it's not all or nothing thing. It's certainly complicated, and there are many factors. Certainly housing is a big part of it, but there are many other complicating factors for this homelessness piece.
So outside of housing, what do you think the complexities are? And that can be for folks in Erie or even outside.
Yeah. Well, certainly, the many individuals are really just a paycheck away from a major crisis like homelessness. And so it's often individuals that, either get sick and are not able to keep up with their financial obligations. They lose their job. So sometimes, it's something completely, you may just not have a history of it, but a precipitating factor happens, and then your world gets turned upside down and you end up down that path. Other times is domestic violence is a real issue and a real cause of homelessness. Affects certainly many families, sadly. We also have mental health, seriously mental illness, and or drug and alcohol, and a combination of the two. I think it's well documented that often, I don't know percentages because it certainly varies by region, but a lot of the people that are homeless have a serious mental illness and a combination often with drug and alcohol issues. And so many of those things are precipitating. And so housing is an important piece and one of the top ones, but it is our contention that unless some of these other pieces are also addressed, it is hard to really make a lasting dent in this reducing of homelessness.
Well, what's fascinating is that a lot of the nonprofits that I work with, they have a specific target population of who they work with. It's sounding to me as though you're serving all populations, from kiddos up to adults, in really any walk of life, just based on what you were saying about being, one paycheck away. So you could today be very stable in income, and something happens you're not expecting to happen. And so you're serving those individuals as well.
Yes. One of the first couple of years I started, I realized organizationally we needed to do a better job of capturing the stories. And so we were doing impact, of course, and doing our outcomes were good, but we were not really documenting, the success story. So we started on a deliberate approach, and it continues to this day to capture the stories. And it's not, from my perspective, sort of leading the charge, it's not a satisfaction survey, although that's nice, but ultimately I want to know, did we help you? So it was during a review of some of these stories that I realized that many individuals, I'm tying it all together here, many individuals came then and still come to St. Martin Center with no history of ever getting assistance anywhere. But life happened, right? They got a divorce, they got sick, and this was way before COVID. And then all of a sudden they're behind on their rent, they're behind on their house payment, or they don't have enough food. And so I realized that we had been serving these populations, forever, but it sort of became very clear to me that and why I'm always speaking about the value of the nonprofit sector and particularly kind of what we do, because you just never know. And I tell folks, it could be your neighbor. They could be fine and then lose their job and all of a sudden they need food, right? They have to figure out which bills to pay. And you just never know who at some point in their life. So often when folks think of charity or nonprofits, they think, they're helping the poor, the same people. But when I try to shift that understanding to listen, it could be your brother or sister. You just don't know. And so to me, that's certainly I feel it adds to the value of the work that we do, but I hope it opens people's eyes to the reality that, life is fragile,
Sure.
right? And there are very few assurances. And so I'm glad that St. Martin Center is able to be there when circumstances drastically change for some individuals, obviously.
So for the population that you're working with or individuals you're working with that are experiencing sudden financial crises, what is the end goal for those folks, right? Because you can't expect it to happen or you're not anticipating it happening. How do you get them coached up to prevent it in the future?
Well, so, I believe it's a two-way street. We have certainly resources. We have, credit repair. We have just general budgeting. We have homeownership help for those that are ready and interested and able. We have just general information referral. But where I'm going with this two-way street is that it really takes two, right? So individuals can be referred to us through, say coordinated entry, or folks sometimes call and say, hey, so-and-so told me about you guys. So, we like most nonprofits, right, try to do a thorough intake to kind of get a better feel for the situation with the understanding and recognition that things don't exist in a vacuum, right? So we try to help folks. Generally, we sort of start with food, right? It's kind of a basic, and at the cost of food these days, if lots of people need it. Mm-hmm. We try to get a better understanding of what the specifics are, and then we kind of go forward based on that. But my perspective about a two-way street is that clearly the success, our ability to help Johnny is very much also dependent on Johnny's ability and willingness to kind of do their part. We can provide some tools. I have HUD certified counselors. We can provide, we can connect them and we can talk to their lenders to try to renegotiate things and all those kinds of things. But ultimately, Johnny still has to do some things differently. Our goal is really not to provide a lifetime of support, but rather to help you from your current situation, whether it be really at the bottom or just a hiccup, and help you move further along so that you can be independent down the road. And now with children, of course, our goal is to get them ready for kindergarten. We have preschool. We have a small school-age program before and after school. But ultimately, the really goal here is to get kids ready so that when they start kindergarten, they're ready. Because we know that when kids start and they're not ready, it takes them a really long time to catch up. And sometimes they're not able to meet their developmental and academic goals, So that very much, the education piece is, in my opinion, a preventative piece, right? But the helping individuals is really a two-way street, right? Let's work together with what you need. If we can help you with those pieces, this is what we do. We'll help you. If we can't, we'll connect you with somebody else. But it's really not meant to be a lifetime of rent, a lifetime of support.
So you brought up two different areas that I'm curious about. The first of which that you were saying the two-way street, and that the client has to participate in the services just as much as you're bringing the services to the client. I'm curious to know what level of engagement you're noticing. Are clients coming with the willingness to do the work and they're open to the support?
Well, so I don't have a statistic that indicates how many folks stopped bringing and doing what we're requested. We keep lots of metrics regarding attended classes, knowledge gain, pre and post test measures. Of course, our kids, we keep all kinds of developmental and social rating scales to see whether they meet. So at any given time, my staff provides to me I kind of track things on a monthly basis where we are. And then we have this other category called other social service assistants. We always have lots of people in the pipeline that are in progress. Most of those eventually make their way to completing whatever is needed, right? So whether it's rent, mortgage, or whatever, sometimes we just lose track of folks, right?
Sure.
And so I don't have an exact percentage, but we certainly try. We try to finish whatever we started, right? But people's circumstances change sometimes very quickly. Whether it's phone numbers, addresses, and certainly when you're working with the homeless or those that say are coming out of a shelter, whatnot. Let's just say life can be fluid for many individuals, right? So we're not able to see everything to completion sometimes, but we give it our best shot.
Well, and I would imagine, so you're offering a piece of that puzzle, right? And then there's other pieces that have to come into play. So I would imagine you're doing your piece and then hoping your referrals are coming to fruition where they're getting additional support when needed.
I think, yes. And that's a good point. And so, I think often when folks think of homelessness or the poor, whatever, people tend to think of one issue, right? Okay, well, they need housing or they need food. But what we know from most of the people that we serve, because we talk to them, right? We try to provide a service in a way that's less transactional and more relational. We want to know who you are. We want to know. We want to make sure that you're safe. That you're all those kind. It's not just about handing something and we'll see you next month.
Sure.
But very clearly, by far, most of the time, individuals, when they're struggling with housing, we find that they don't have enough food. That they're juggling some of their bills. They're about to, they could be getting shut off, or they don't have enough warm clothing. There's just so many pieces. And so I think that's part of the challenge with homelessness, that it really, most of the time, clearly relates to just poverty in general, which of course is a super complicated thing. And I think folks are, and we're in 2025, I think that the funders and other partners are sort of, and frankly, municipalities are getting a better understanding that poverty is not a one-dimensional thing. Health, education, all those pieces are related. So we do what we can. We try to do it well. But to your point, and it's certainly not not trying to excuse our work, but for really a family to be able to move from here to there, it takes a lot of moving parts and other supportive things that need to be addressed. And so the hope is that we do well what we do, but that we figure out a way to connect Johnny with the other help that they need so that they can be further along, because it's generally more than one thing.
Of course. And I would imagine increased engagement with the older clients that have children that may be in the program. Kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit. So you have your kiddos that are coming in, you're getting them prepared for kindergarten. What does that look like when it comes to parental involvement?
So that's a good question. It's really kind of a combination approach. So we, of course, there are those parents that just prefer to just every day talk to the teacher, kind of get the heads up and go from there. We also utilize certainly not a requirement, but a tool. It's an app that our teachers and the admin staff at the Learning Center use to communicate to the parents, to show them pictures and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
We do lots of posting through our social media channels regarding what takes place over there. But one of the things, that we do that is unlike any other early learning center in the region is, and it goes to your question about uniqueness, is that we follow a model that it's called continuity of care. So every year, as the kids go from one grade, they're in preschool, but they go from the ones to the twos to the threes their teachers accompany them. And so we have 2 teachers per classroom. Now, unless, of course, the staff leaves the organization, then we have to replace them. But we basically have our teachers progress, and then when the kids go into kinder or whatever, then our teachers go back to infant and rotate. So we feel it provides better tracking of outcomes because we have the same teachers.
Sure.
It helps in the consistency and relationship building because the kids don't have to know a new teacher every year. But it also helps the parents because they don't have to keep, in traditional school, kids have new teachers every year, and it's
Sure.
like, okay, it's a continual re-engagement of, well, what is this teacher like? How do I better communicate with them? You don't have to deal with that at St. Martin Center because our kids move up with their teacher. And so we feel that is one of the best things that we offer that really helps to maximize engagement with parents.
I love that. I was going to ask you, so what would you say of all levels of clients that you serve, what is the most important piece of that relationship building with your clients?
What is the most important? Well, I would say perhaps different members of our team would say things differently, but I feel communication really. I mean, you would think, rapport, but you can't have good rapport without proper communication. And so, whether it's folks that come for budgeting and counseling, if folks are not being truly communicating their need, or if we're not asking the right questions, we don't get the right answers. Therefore, we're unable to provide as impactful of our help. If we, and then when it comes to the kids, they need to communicate. They need to demonstrate that they're learning the things that we do, but we need to communicate with the parents. The parents properly need to tell us what's going on at home. And so truly, as it is when you're in management, and, I truly feel communication is so essential for leading staff. I think it is with clients too. I mean, that's communication leads to good relationships, which leads to certainly not a guarantee of outcome, but it helps in the process.
Sure. So I set you up for my transition here. Dun, dun, dun.
Okay.
All right. So we talked about what you and your staff do, which is fantastic, but you're one piece of the puzzle, right? So let's take a look at Erie in general and all the other nonprofit work. What is the relationship like for you in working with other nonprofits as far as collaboration is concerned?
So, we, by virtue of the work that we do, there is, we don't advertise it per se, but there's daily collaboration with a variety of partners across different sectors. So, for example, our early learning center on a daily basis, the center itself allows a variety of providers to come in and provide speech or provide occupational or behavioral assistance to a particular child. So there's a daily interaction with a variety of providers, all of us, of course, with the goal of helping Johnny be successful. On the self-sufficiency side of things, I mean, our food pantry, we naturally partner with Second Harvest, but we have a variety of folks that help us, food-wise and labor-wise to make we're serving like 900 people per month, and logistically between storage and how do we do this and schedules, it's a pretty big operation for us. And so it takes a lot of people to make that happen. On the long-term services approach, we're working almost daily with lenders, banks, realtors. There's just partnerships throughout that are really kind of an essential part of the work that we do. In general, when it comes to grants and those kinds of things, that's kind of a different conversation. And so we certainly have some partnerships with some other organizations, Early Connections, for example, that we work with on the education improvement tax credit. We have other partnerships with other folks on our financial literacy classes. So when it comes to grants, I want us to be more deliberate organizationally because I feel that for me and many others, a collaboration when it comes to, say, programming like that, for me, a true collaboration involves we're both getting paid. We both have something to offer and receive as part of this relationship. So A collaboration for me is not a letter of support for a grant request. A collaboration for me is, hey, we're in this grant together. Probably somebody has to be the lead organization, but we both get some sort of payment and both provide some sort of programming towards a overall goal.
Yeah.
Those true collaborations, I will say, are harder to find than the other collaborations I mentioned earlier, which are a lot of it is daily, smaller kinds of things. I welcome larger, broader collaborations. I think they're harder to put together, probably in part because of just the limits of funding opportunities, time, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
I would argue that if we had more of those true collaborations, clearly there would be less need for duplication, and there is some duplication in the sector. I would not say. I'm always careful when I mention that because I think there's a misnomer that there's lots of duplication in the nonprofit sector, and there needs to be some client choice, and I think folks sometimes don't get that right. I think people think, well, there's too many nonprofits doing the same thing. Yes, but there's also a lot of doctors. There's not one doctor in Erie, right?
Sure.
There are more than one pharmacy, and there's more than one clothing store, right? So the same applies in the nonprofit sector. And you want folks to have a choice. If there's only one behavioral health provider, A, they couldn't keep up, but B, I think folks need a choice. So I say that carefully, that there's certainly some duplication, but not as much as I think folks think. I also think, though, and this is where other folks may not necessarily see it the same way. I do think some of the systems that are in place as far as funding also contribute to the challenge of many nonprofits, and so because often nonprofits generally need funding to do work, right? Very few that I can think of are so set financially via fee for service or endowments that they don't worry too much about fundraising. Most of us really have to regularly seek public support. But often the systems that are in place locally for funding make it very difficult it just doesn't help with the sustainability of the work. So, if there was more funding, if you will, that was available, that would allow all of us to do the work at sufficient funding, I would argue that most of us would spend less time doing fundraising and development work because we would be able to be more mission focused. Imagine how much further a community would be if all of us would be able to do more mission work and more focus. I, as the CEO, of course, my staff does the face-to-face, and so I work. My big role is to support the staff and resource them to be able to do the work. But make no mistake, I keep an eye on mission, and I'm keeping an eye on the financing on a regular basis. I can't have one without the other.
Sure.
And I would argue that we often hear and see local funding opportunities that is insufficient funding. More often than not, none of it wants to provide funding for the staff, which is the biggest expense that all of us nonprofits have. All nonprofit work cannot be done with volunteers. Some can,
sure,
but not all of it can, and certainly not very specialized work. And so when your local funding system doesn't properly resource you to do that, then you as an organization obviously have to find the way to meet that. And so all those kinds of, I think all the effort, I always say that, we love I like development. I certainly like the connection, but I think every nonprofit would tell you if they didn't have to do as much development, they would gladly do more mission work, more program work. So it's not an excuse, but it's an explanation. And I truly think that the funding systems that are in place certainly bear part responsibility for this.
Well, and it sounds as though you're having to shift what limited resources you have into seeking additional funding. So will you dream with me for a second?
Sure.
What would be David's nirvana for funding when it comes to running the St. Martin Center?
Well, so we're in the maybe early stages of a strategic plan, and one of the, it's really two main goals, right? Yes, it's a 3-year plan, the ultimate deliverable, but the goals are, one, we want the finished product and process to lead us to a plan that's going to help us be more impactful with clients that we serve, whether they be children or adults. But so that's very much a client-centered goal, if you will. On the agency side, I feel that we need to have more stable funding, and what that means for St. Martin Center, I can't speak to other agencies, is we have funded the operation and continue to do with many funding sources. We're thankful for the diocese and many strong partners we have, good partners. But all in all, we've, through major shifts, we've had to add a lot of different funding sources to maintain operation. And it, more grants adds more layers, more oversight, et cetera, et cetera. So ideally, stable funding would mean more unrestricted funding for us, which would give us the ability to plan further out in terms of dreams. Simplified to me, so instead of having a program be funded by many sources, I would like to have the same money or more, but a lot less funding sources, which would allow the running of this program to be simpler, because we all want to do what's right. I mean, I think if you ask all of us in the nonprofit sector, most of them would say we'd like to have less paperwork and more impact in our clients, and so and it's a perennial juggling act to do that. But that would be great, right? More stable, simplified funding, ideally more unrestricted funding that gives you the flexibility that we need so desperately. And why do we need flexibility? Well, because things change quickly in the nonprofit sector. There's either emerging needs or there's staffing things that need to happen. And unfortunately, many of us in the nonprofit sector, certainly in the human services sector, or education for that matter, we're not often in charge of our own destiny, right? We know where we'd like to go, but we're not. We have to meet lots of requirements for our funding partners and regulations that sometimes, I would say, limit our ability to be impactful.
Sure.
And so I think all of us, whether they say it verbally or not, I think if you ask most nonprofit CEOs, they would say, yeah, we'd like to have more flexible funding so that we could be more helpful and more responsive to the clients and to the staff that do the work.
So listen, Erie, David wants unrestricted funding. Is that fair?
Lots of it, and every year. Yes.
Okay. Very good.
I think we need it. I think it would be an interesting experiment to provide if us nonprofits had less restrictions, we would be undoubtedly more impactful. Again, it's not an excuse; it's just an explanation. And so I think sometimes when things don't go the way, funders tend to kind of tighten restrictions and whatever, when it should actually be the other way around. Let us do the work.
Sure.
And then less regulations will most likely lead to more impact.
Of course. So looking down the road, right, we have, you said 3 years, the strategic plan. What is the next step for the organization in securing sustainability?
Well, so one of the things, of course, we're doing our due diligence right now. The consultants are working with us and interviewing. Really, again, they're just in the thick of all the stakeholders, and by that I mean board, staff, funding partners, clients across the board, donors. So we're doing a very thorough, or they're doing a very thorough analysis. I think one of the important things for St. Martin Center, as I recommend for any organization, is to have somebody outside look in, right? And so we've deliberately chosen a consulting firm, as we did the last time we did the plan, that's from out of town. Look at us with fresh eyes, tell us what you see. And then we've tasked them with providing us some best practices so that we can compare, gauge, and evaluate for ourselves, right? I mean, just because something works in Cincinnati doesn't mean it's a plug and play here in Erie. But I will admit, I mean, I'm certainly not an expert on everything, and one could argue if I'm an expert on anything, for that matter. but it is important for us to, if I believe that we need others to look in, and that's why we have an outsider. But I also believe that if we want to be more impactful down the road, then we need to do some things differently, right? If we keep doing the same things, we're going to get the same result. And we're not happy with the same result. We want to do better. We want to provide help we want to be more stable and self-sustaining, if you will, as an organization. And we want that for our clients as well. And so it does necessitate that you do some things differently. What those are and what they're going to look like, well, we're going to find out soon enough. But we certainly I've always been a proponent that, we want to do the right things and we're going to evaluate. It's not working. Or if it doesn't work good enough, then we need to try something else, not just for fun, but because it's ultimately about we want to help people in the way that's beneficial to them. And frankly, I feel that the work that we do really just extends beyond the individual. That's why our mission says, strengthening individuals and supporting the community in this fashion, because I feel that any work that we do with individual families ultimately benefits the whole system of our community, right? And so we don't talk about that enough with our work. We generally talk about families that we serve, but I think if we do the right thing and are able to work together with our families and they're in a better place, little by little, all those families, we can make a difference. Because I think Erie needs different things, right? More opportunity, more affordable housing, et cetera, et cetera. And so us, as well as other nonprofits, certainly are trying to do what we can to help people, but to support the broader community.
Yeah. It sounds like the work is very intentional.
It is. I don't want us to do things that don't make sense.
Sure.
We want to be impactful. We certainly want to be good stewards of the funds that we've been given. At the same time, by advocating for more and less restrictive, we can be trusted, and I think we have been making a difference for a long time. Certainly, the organization's been around for close to 60 years, and so 12 for me now. So,
well, before we wrap today, I just wanted to ask, what can Erie do to support you and your team?
I think it's important for so as I shared earlier, many of us nonprofits, we have to satisfy the regulations and restrictions of the funders and those that provide some support to us. I mean, it's only it sort of comes with the territory. I really feel that, as I shared a few minutes ago, that for those that are in a position to provide those resources, I think providing those resources in a way that makes it easier for us nonprofits to operate would make a world of difference. So, as an example, during the heyday of COVID, local funding sources, which I'll go, unnamed, really hustled and provided funding very quickly, simplified funding procedures, application procedures, and got the money out very quickly. Really allowed some of us, particularly who we were dealing with. I mean, I think one day we served 300 individuals one day in food. I mean, people, it was a difficult time for all of us.
Yeah.
And the funding structures, and for that matter, even the feds made it easier to access funds. It made a world of difference. We were able to help people in need, not stress about the paperwork, although it certainly needed to be done, but we were able to do what we were called to do. And yet, when the crisis ended, and it took a while, right? Then we've gone back to our ways. And often what we hear and see from almost on a yearly basis is funding source X or partner X is requiring higher matching or this and that, or they want to be, they want us to acknowledge their contribution all year long. And for me, I think if it's truly about helping people, right? Let's just make it easier for those of us that are actually on the front lines. Make it easier for us, and we'll do an even better job. Mm-hmm. And so I think Erie can do that. I think Erie overall, something drastic needs to happen about affordability in terms of rental housing. Folks are obviously routinely asked to spend. What's the average now? $750 per month for a small place. And folks with the kind of money they make in Erie, and so when they pay those, then they have no money for food or anything else. I think the affordability is a real issue, and until that is addressed, I think it's going to be very difficult to bring down the poverty rates in our community, because nobody wants to be homeless, so people will pay whatever in order to stay in an apartment, but then they have nothing else left. Sure. And I think that those are some two big ones that I think could make a big difference in reducing. I don't know that it's realistic to say that we're going to completely eliminate poverty, but if we can drastically reduce poverty by increasing access and lowering costs for folks, I think we've done a world of good.
Of course. So for those folks that are able to support financially, can they go to your website and make direct donations that way?
Yes, we can take funds and donations through our website. We're on the usual, right? Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Of course, our website, it stays fairly fresh. We have our signature fundraiser, Erie's Best Coffee, coming up here in about a month. So we have no shortage of opportunities for folks to come alongside us and help us, right? We cannot do it without public support. The services that we offer are at no cost, or when it comes to tuition, it's subsidized tuition, right? Mm-hmm. So we just want we want to be able to help people in a way that is really actually helpful to them.
Yeah. What is the website address for folks to look you up?
It's just stmartincenter.org. So you don't spell out Saint, it's just stmartincenter.org. And then you can always Google it, but most likely that'll get you there. And then it's pretty easy to find where the give and donate button is.
Or we could give them your home address if they would like to drop off, personal donation.
We could do your address as well if you're willing. And then, but listen, people can also stop by, and we do that. We do have that. We will make it easy for you to give and come alongside us. We're not going to pester you with an appeal every month. But we do want to have a relationship with our donors as well, because we think of our donors as partners, right? And actually, many of our donors also get their hands dirty and join us on our food pantry and whatnot. So, we like to, and we do good work and do better work by relationships, right? And as I said earlier, we really believe in the relational side versus the transactional side. Mm-hmm. Anybody can do an application online, and but we'd like to get to know you and see if we can help you.
Of course. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for all the work that you and your team are doing. Erie is so grateful for everything that you're doing. So thank you again.
Thank you. We appreciate any and all opportunities to share about the work that we do, and certainly put the word out about support we need.
All right. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.